Just a few months ago, Aston Villa defied the odds. They crashed the traditional top four, secured Champions League football, and looked every bit the rising superpower of English football. Fast forward to the opening weekend of the new season, and that momentum vanished. Villa went down to Brighton and were dismantled 4-0 by a side that looked cohesive and ready, while Villa struggled to find any rhythm. Unai Emery was left looking on as his team started without a recognized center forward. Star players were mysteriously absent or sitting on the bench, and the core spine of the squad that had dominated last year was nowhere to be found. Why would a wildly successful club, sitting on the brink of a historic Champions League campaign, suddenly dismantle the exact formula that got them there? The truth is, Aston Villa didn't want to tear up their squad. They were forced to by the Premier League's Profitability and Sustainability Rules, or PSR. On the surface, these rules are simple accounting guidelines. They dictate that a club must balance their financial books and keep their total losses under a strict limit over a rolling 3-year period. But if a club's ledgers dip below that threshold, they are hit with severe sporting penalties, like massive point deductions. It effectively strips decision-making power away from the football manager and hands it to the accountants. While these rules were officially written to protect clubs from going bankrupt, their practical effect is entirely different. PSR has created a systemic ceiling, one that penalizes ambitious teams the moment they try to challenge the established elite. To understand how we got here, we have to look at what the league was originally terrified of. These rules were designed to stop owners from gambling their club's existence on chasing quick glory. In English football, this nightmare scenario is universally known as doing a Leeds. It references Leeds United's catastrophic financial collapse in the early 2000s. An absolute ruin that the league was desperate to never see repeated. This chart shows the mathematical reality of PSR for a rising team. When a non-Big Six club succeeds, the transfer values of their players suddenly skyrocket. However, their baseline global revenue, things like international merchandise and legacy sponsorships, remains relatively low. Because that everyday income can't match the immense wealth of the elite, the rising club's expenses quickly outpace their revenue, and they immediately hit the PSR penalty threshold. There is only one legal escape route to avoid point deductions. The rising club is forced to sell off their most valuable assets, their best players, just to balance the ledger. This financial dynamic creates a predatory environment. The traditional wealthy elite clubs simply circle above, waiting to pick off the top talent from the exact teams trying to challenge them. The most direct consequence of this math is who it targets first. The pressure heavily focuses on homegrown academy talent, because under PSR accounting, selling a player you developed yourself goes down on the spreadsheet as pure profit. Newcastle United experienced this firsthand. Despite having wealthy owners, the rules forced them to sell promising homegrown players like Elliot Anderson simply to satisfy the ledger before the financial deadline. The immediate consequence lands squarely on the manager's desk. They are left fielding disjointed squads, forced to throw inexperienced 18- and 20-year-olds into midfield battles against seasoned Premier League veterans. It also leads to the modern phenomenon where healthy star players are omitted from crucial games. Players like Ollie Watkins find themselves stuck in a strange transfer limbo, sitting in the stands instead of playing. The logic is purely financial. Clubs cannot risk fielding their most valuable asset, having them get injured, and losing a pending multi-million-pound sale. The human cost of these financial rules is that they prioritize accounting deadlines over squad stability. Any progress made on the pitch is entirely vulnerable to the demands of the balance sheet. With rapid growth now hitting a hard financial limit, ambitious mid-tier clubs have to move away from traditional long-term planning and choose between two highly restrictive models of survival. Path A is the Spurs model. It requires accepting a decade or more of slow growth and extreme patience, while carefully investing in physical infrastructure, like a new stadium. This long, grueling process is the only way to eventually generate the massive, sustainable global revenue required to safely cement yourself as a Big Six club without triggering PSR penalties. If you can't do that, you take Path B, the Brighton model. This means accepting your role as a permanent stepping stone, building an entire football club around the expectation that you will lose your best players every single year. Both of these models share the same underlying truth. They act as a brake on disruptive success. Under the current rules, a sudden rise to the top becomes a massive financial liability. When you look at massive historic clubs like Aston Villa and Newcastle United, it is easy to see why their fan bases are frustrated. They finally built winning teams, only to find the system discourages that very success. From the outside looking in, the Premier League increasingly operates as a closed shop. It functions as a system designed to protect the historical elite from any sudden, well-funded challengers. There is a harsh reality in how the modern game treats these rising teams. You are permitted to overachieve and temporarily crash the Champions League party. But the true cost of PSR is that it forces a permanent ceiling on ambition. No matter how well you play on the pitch, the rules eventually dictate that you must sell your best assets back to the very clubs you're trying to overtake.